I've got to admit, when I first saw the trailers for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, I was apprehensive. I thought it looked too much like a video game, and assumed it was just another soulless cash grab, another brand from a long line of recognizable properties that ran its course decades ago, being milked once more for another round of profit squeezing by its corporate overlords. And can you blame me? This is the 7th feature film adaptation from a franchise that's seen countless TV series, video games, comics, and toys being created since it began in the 1980s. So to my cynical eyes, Mutant Mayhem registered as nothing more than a new coat of paint on a worn-out shell, and I envisioned the Turtles merely reenacting their old party tricks of eating pizza, fighting Shredder, while shouting "Cowabunga, dude!" in a predictable story told 1,000 times before, being targeted towards more innocent minds, too young and stupid to know any better. But oh, how wrong I turned out to be! Because Mutant Mayhem is in fact one of the deepest, darkest, and scariest films I've ever seen that's supposedly made for children, mirroring the dark kids films of the early 80s, like The Dark Crystal or Time Bandits. In fact, I had to double-check this film was even made for children after watching it, as it definitely pushes the boundaries further than I thought possible for a PG-rated film. It's also clearly been made by real fans, who have attempted to do justice to the source material by making a definitive retelling that takes the strongest aspects of the Turtles while shedding the baggage, remixing the elements to create a new experience that appeals to long-term devotees and newcomers alike. The result is an original and fresh take on the Turtles that made me feel like I've never seen this story told before. Truth being told, I knew nothing about the original comics before watching this film, which I've since discovered were never intended for children, and have clued me in as to why this film is so dark and violent, which attempts to balance the influence of its darker source material while still appealing to the kid-friendly version the franchise inevitably became. The key to its success lies in its focus on the teenage aspect, instead of two-dimensional caricatures that merely fight bad guys, spout catchphrases, and eat pizza. These turtles are depicted and voiced by real teenage boys who suffer from the same trials and tribulations every teenager faces, but to a heightened degree due to their unconventional appearance, which forces them to hide away from a world they long to be a part of, with themes touching on the challenges associated with adolescence, such as finding your place in the world, social acceptance, and coming out of your shell. It's basically the Elephant Man meets Batman, except instead of a single lonely outcast, it's 4 teenage brothers sharing the journey. In previous adaptations, the Turtles were primarily known to us through the eyes of April O'Neil, who acted as the audience's human surrogate in making sense of these strange sewer-dwelling weirdos. But Mutant Mayhem omits that dynamic completely, putting the Turtles front and center, allowing us to get under their shells and see the world through their eyes. The cel-shaded graffiti-like style, combined with the stop-motion/cartoon animation, is incredibly effective too at creating a moody atmosphere without things getting too scary, bringing to life the neon-lit urban environments our nocturnal turtles inhabit, as 99% of the film takes place at night. The only natural light we see is from the moon, while the rest is generated by the electric human world, giving it a similar look to films like Blade Runner, Escape from New York, and The Terminator, with the soundtrack too sharing many similarities with those movies, being comprised of synth-based tones which reflect the early 80s atmosphere this film replicates, but with plenty of upbeat hip-hop songs too to liven the mood. Now, while I was happily surprised with Mutant Mayhem's fresh take on the Turtles, depicting them as real teenagers, and appreciated exploring the mutant versus human aspect too, whilst omitting the old familiar adversaries of Shredder, Krang, and the Foot Clan to tell a completely new origin story, there were some inherent problems I had with this reinterpretation. Firstly, The villain is just too similar to Magneto, and the third act is straight out of an X-Men film, which felt unoriginal. Secondly, whilst depicting the Turtles as real teenagers is certainly original, the notion that they hate themselves and wish they were regular people undermines the essence of who the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are supposed to be. Although depicted as simpler characters in previous adaptations, they were always committed to who they were and understood their role as underground vigilante crime fighters, assigned by Splinter to protect the city. But Mutant Mayhem reinterpretation of the Turtles as self-loathing outsiders whose only wish is to become real boys like Pinocchio flies in the face of the original spirit, further compounded by the fact their only goal is to attend high school, whereas all real teenagers know that high school is absolutely shit. Also, if a group of half-human, half-turtle people really did save the city and were accepted into high school, how long would it take before the honeymoon period ended and they were socially ostracized again due to their strange appearance? Especially among teenagers. Not long, I'd bet. Plus, the Turtles express desires to go to the prom and get girlfriends, and Leonardo has a crush on April. But what human girl is going to want to be romantically involved with a mutant turtle man? The sad truth is, these real boys trapped inside turtle bodies would never be allowed the normal life they so desperately crave, and in reality would be condemned to a life of misery if their only aspiration was to fit in amongst human society. Another contradiction with this theme is that the Turtles, despite their appearance, are on one hand presented as friendly teenage boys who just want to fit in and be normal, yet on the other hand, they violently beat the shit out of grown men in the dead of night, using melee weapons, just to satisfy their adolescent craving of wanting to fit in and be socially accepted by their peers. But would you want to sit next to the guy in class who spends his free time violently stabbing people in order to compensate for his strange appearance and to gain social acceptance? Also, Splinter's characterization is another problem I had with this film. In previous adaptations, Splinter was always depicted as a Zen master who trained the Turtles in meditation to calm their minds, something which would really have come in handy to help these neurotic turtles, and could have allowed them to recognize the superficiality of their egoic craving to be normal, and to make peace with themselves as they are. But this Splinter is overly protective, and constantly worrying, the complete opposite of a Zen master, who only trained them in ninjutsu because he stumbled upon some videotapes. But he may as well have just found guns and taught them to shoot people, given the total eradication of spiritual discipline seen in this adaptation. So while superficially this was a fun and enjoyable kids film that I would still recommend, and was certainly better than many previous adaptations, the thematic resolution lets it down. It had the potential to work, but wasn't thought through well enough. For example, Splinter could have realized he was too paranoid and learned a spiritual discipline to free his and the Turtles' minds from their neurosis and help them to realize they could be something much greater than mere high school students. Rather than seeing their appearance as a hindrance, they could have realized the strengths of their uniqueness and come upon a deeper realization that their time would be better spent in defending the city rather than attempting to fit in and be normal, which is a terrible lesson to impose on children anyway, as surely a Ninja Turtles film should exalt the virtues of being proud of who you are in the face of society's imposed traditions, rather than telling kids to hide their uniqueness, blend in with the crowd, and follow the well-trodden path of mediocrity. As rather than recognizing the virtues of being awesome crime-fighting warriors, the ending sees these turtles hang up their capes, completely ignoring the superhero prime directive that with great power comes great responsibility.